Welcome to EPG Patashala. I am Professor G. Vedaparayana, retired from the Department of Philosophy, SV University, Tirupati. The paper that we are going to discuss now is Indian Religion and Philosophy, and the module that we are going to take up is Arya Samaj. Arya Samaj is also one of the greatest movements or societies of the Indian Renaissance, founded by Dayānanda Saraswati, who has revolutionized Indian religion, particularly Hinduism, with reference to the conditions that were prevailing in those days. The objectives of this lesson are: first, we are going to take up the introduction. In introduction, we are going to discuss the contemporary scene, and next we take up Dayānanda Saraswati's biographical details, and then we talk about the establishment of Arya Samaj, the ideals of Arya Samaj, and then we take up the religious reforms of Arya Samaj, and then we take up social reforms of Arya Samaj, then we go to the summary as a sort of conclusion. So in the introduction, we are going to see what were the circumstances under which this society called Arya Samaj came into existence. See, contemporary India was troubled with a number of problems, particularly superstition, casteism, illiteracy, all sorts of problems were there in Indian religion particularly, Indian culture particularly. Therefore, some of the reformers who were very much concerned about the transformation of Indian condition thought that there should be some radical change in the Indian religion itself, because Indian religion gave scope for people to think negative about it, and also thought of going or embracing other religions like Islam and Christianity. So the creation of modern and progressive India was the paramount objective of the social reform movements in those days, and reformers aimed at making India very active, enterprising, a free and moral and new nation. They thought actively, centered around the reconstruction of India. They contributed in different ways to the furthering of Indian Renaissance, that is Indian Reformation. Their contact with the Western civilization gave rise to reform movements like Brahma Samaj, Arya Samaj, and they made an indelible impact on the people of India. So Arya Samaj was founded on the bedrock of the Vedas. It was not influenced by other religions like Christianity or Islam. It was known as a militantly a Hindu organization. Then it advocated a return to the pristine purity of the Vedic Hinduism, and Dayānanda Saraswati, as I have already mentioned, was its founder, and a dynamic humanist. He was who took the responsibility of restructuring the established Hinduism. He wanted to infuse into Hinduism new blood and fresh vigor. So Arya Samaj became a potent factor in the socio-political awakening and also religious awakening of modern India, and it was a powerful religious force that the Samaj still remains a source of unifying India. So now we will come to Dayānanda Saraswati, where he was born and how he became a great leader or founder of this Samaj. So Dayānanda Saraswati was born in 1824 in the state of Morvi, in those days known as Kathiawar, and his father Amba Shankar, he was a wealthy Brahmin and a banker, and he was a worshipper of Shiva. And Dayananda's original name was Mool Shankar, and his father wanted this Mool Shankar, his son, to become a religious person, and he was very careful to give him only Hindu education, education centered around the Hindu scriptures. So his education was in vernacular, therefore he learned Sanskrit, religious literature and grammar, and he never learned English because it was considered to be a foreign language. So there are three instances of special reference in his life. From 1824 to 1845, these instances took place. The first, at the age of 14, in the temple of Shiva, on Shivaratri day, Dayānanda Saraswati, or Mool Shankar, his original name, he is not at Dayānanda Saraswati, he is only a Mool Shankar. So he saw mice running over the idol of Shiva or image of Shiva in the temple. And second, at the age of 18, he had to experience the death of his sister and uncle, which deeply affected him. And the third is, at the age of 21, he fled from home in order to escape from the entanglements of marriage. So these three instances developed deep transformation in the mind of Dayānanda Saraswati. The first instance of mice, going over the idol of Shiva, made him stop idol worship. So he did not believe in idol worship. And the second instance, the death of his uncle and sister made him to go in search of moksha, because death is a cause of sorrow, and only moksha, which is the overcoming of the birth and death. So he wanted to discover what is moksha. And then third event is going out of home, because he wanted to escape from the bondage of marriage, because marriage is a bondage, marriage is a hurdle for the search of moksha. Therefore he wanted to remain unmarried as a sannyasi in order to go on the path of finding moksha, which is the deliverance from the sorrow of birth and death. So these are the three events that are very important in the life of Mool Shankar, which made him to become an altogether different man, devoted to the life of religion and spirituality. Next, so the second stage of his life of Mool Shankar, between 45 and 63, he became a mendicant after those three earlier events. Mendicant means a wandering beggar, and he was involved in deep religious studies, and in his wanderings he met a number of ascetics who received him into their order, and he happened to meet sannyasi named Brahmananda, who convinced him of the truth of the Vedas. This Brahmananda played a very important role in the life of Mool Shankar. So he received initiation into the Saraswati order of Shankaradandis. As a result, he was rechristened with the new name as Dayānanda Saraswati, and he gave up the Vedanta standpoint also, along with taking the new name Dayānanda Saraswati. Nevertheless, he remained ascetic and retained the new name Dayānanda Saraswati. In the next 8 years, he pursued his study of yoga. After meeting this Brahmananda, both classical and tantric yogas, he began to study very seriously, and he regarded yoga as the proper means for reaching the emancipation, which was his aim. Later he became skeptical and suspicious about many books on yoga. He pulled a dead body floating down the river, cut it open and examined the chakras, because in yoga there is a theory that there are chakras or nerve centers in the body which play an important role. By concentrating on these nerves only, we can attain yoga, samadhi state. So he just wanted to realize samadhi instead of moksha through yoga, and he tried to meditate on these centers for a long time, but he could not get any result. So therefore he wanted to examine whether there are chakras or nerve centers in the body at all. If at all they are there, there should be there in the body of a dead person also. So therefore once it so happened that he dragged the dead body flowing through the river, and he cut it open and searched for these nerve centers or chakras, and he did not find any chakras anywhere in the body, no trace of them. So therefore he started disbelieving in yoga also. So another important landmark that took place in Dayananda's life was in 1860. That is, he came across a blind sage by name Swami Virajananda of Mathura, and he became his disciple. That he became the disciple of Virajananda, and under him he studied Panini grammar and Vedanta sutras with him. He mastered all these Vedanta sutras and wanted to spread the knowledge of Shastras and fight against the prevailing false sects that were there. In 1863, he took leave of his master and began his wanderings again, traveling all over India and preaching the message of Vedanta. His mind experienced a change of clearly recognizing Shiva as the only one of the many realities, and he began ardently worshipping Shiva. So what we have to remember here is Mool Shankar or Dayānanda Saraswati, who had left his faith in the Vedas and had taken yoga, after coming into contact with Virajananda, again he went back to Vedas. He disbelieved in yoga and he wanted to study Yoga Shastras, because this Virajananda told that Vedas alone or Upanishads alone contain the pure truth of spirituality. Therefore you study them more thoroughly. That is Shiva. Shiva means peace or the absolute reality. And that is what these Upanishads or Vedanta Sutras teach. Therefore he wanted to study them very deeply, and convinced that Upanishads and Vedas alone have the truth of spirituality, and therefore he began ardently worshipping Shiva and also trying to understand what is the nature of Shiva by reading the scriptures more and more. So he went on tours preaching throughout India, holding public discussions with Pandits, Maulvis and missionaries on religious, philosophical and literary works. He published a number of books and went from town to town delivering lectures in Sanskrit on the right interpretation of the Vedas. He was successful in his attempt, as he could draw huge audiences wherever he went. He lived like a sannyasi, wearing only minimum of clothing, that too in white. We come on to next Dayānanda Saraswati. Another important events in his life is in 1872 he met the leaders of Brahma Samaj, namely Keshav Chandra Sen, Devendranath Tagore and also Sri Ramakrishna. And this meeting of the members of Brahma Samaj experienced a lot of exercise on his mind, and this brought about some transformation in his outlook. That is, as a result, Swami Dayānanda began to wear regular clothes. He gave up using Sanskrit in his lectures and spoke in Hindi like the leaders of Brahma Samaj, and his fame and influence continued to spread and his wisdom became deeper. In 1874, he completed his most important work, that is Satyartha Prakasha, which is known as the Light of Truth. In 1874, he went to Bombay, where he came in touch with the Hindu community, and he started an organization called Arya Samaj, and he launched in Bombay his great foundation, namely Arya Samaj, in 1875. Main features of this new society is modified in accordance with the ideals of the Brahma Samaj and Prarthana Samaj. Organic union of these organizations was prevented by Dayananda's conviction that the infallibility of the Vedas and the truth of transmigration. 1877, Swami Dayānanda visited Punjab and particularly Lahore, and that visit was a great success, and the headquarters of Arya Samaj was moved to Lahore from Bombay. So this is the very important event that we have to remember in the life of Dayānanda Saraswati. He established this organization called Arya Samaj in order to spread the message of the Vedas and Upanishads, and also reconstruct the Hindu religion in particular, not taking the truths of other religions into consideration. He wanted only Hinduism should be reconstructed. It should not be complementary to any other religions, because Hinduism or Hindu truth is such that it is holistic within itself. It did not take any aspect of any other religion. So next 6 years Dayānanda lived and worked, touring throughout North India, extending the activities of Arya Samaj. He developed partnership between Arya Samaj and Theosophical Society also. In those days, Theosophical Society was one of the spiritual organizations which wanted to bring about all religions together and preach one truth which is relevant for all, universal brotherhood. But unfortunately, that unity between Theosophical Society and Arya Samaj could not last long. It lasted only for 2 years, because they later on came to know that there are differences between these two societies. The Theosophical Society leaders, they did not like to go on or continue with Dayānanda Saraswati's Arya Samaj. That is, the Theosophical Society suggested a union of the two movements, but they were not unified, but continued only 1881. So their partnership dissolved over the question of the personality of God. This was the main reason for their division. And Dayānanda died on 30th October in 1883 at the age of 59 at Ajmer. He strived hard to stem the tide of pessimism of the people of India by recovering the Vedic optimism. He was progressive, and he attacked superstitions, he attacked polytheism, and promoted mass education. He was the champion of the untouchables and opened the doors of Arya Samaj to them also, which means to the underprivileged or untouchables. And his message of Swaraj and Swadeshi became a part of the national consciousness. He was not only a religious reformer, but also a national and social reformer. So he propounded nationalism based on spiritualism, laid stress on moral and mental improvement rather than just material prosperity. He led the revolt against the blind acceptance of Western ideas and ideals, and Arya Samaj became a potent factor in religious, political and social awakening of India. It helped in expanding the consciousness of the people of India. So these are the details that we have seen what is Arya Samaj, along with the life of Dayānanda Saraswati. See, Dayānanda Saraswati's life and Arya Samaj are so intertwined, are so interconnected, that we cannot know what Dayānanda Saraswati's life was without at least mentioning some of the important points of the organization that he established, namely Arya Samaj. But now in particular, we will come to know what are the essential principles, essential characteristics of the Arya Samaj that was established by this Dayānanda Saraswati. So Arya Samaj is the product of a typical Hindu reform movement founded by Swami Dayānanda in 1875. Literally it means the society of nobles, and it believed in the infallibility of the Vedas. Its slogan was "Back to Vedas," and it is the offspring. Offspring means it is the product or the result of a peculiar interpretation of Vedas, and it upheld the absolutism that is contained in the Upanishads. It believes that the Vedas contain the seed of all sciences and knowledge, everything worth knowing. Recent inventions of modern science also were alluded to in the Vedas. And a few more important, essential points that we should know about Arya Samaj is, religiously, Samaj was against idol worship, animal sacrifice, ancestors worship, priestcraft, offerings made in the temples. So it was not for even the pujas or rituals in the temples. Socially denounced the caste system, untouchability, child marriage and discrimination against women on the ground that all these lacked Vedic sanction. So it allowed and encouraged converts to Hinduism, which means people who had converted from Hinduism to Islam, Christianity or to any other religion. This Samaj began to welcome them back to Hinduism. It was ready to take them after making some purification act. It wanted to take back the Hindus that were converted to other religions. And it accepted as dharma whatever is in full conformity with the Vedas. Dharma is that which is impartial, just, truthful, and that which is not opposed to the teachings of God as embodied in the Vedas. Samaj was a revolutionary movement, both religiously and socially, showing the purity and the scientific background of the Vedas. So its main aim was to save Hinduism from the onslaught of Christianity and Islam. So these are the important ideals with which the Arya Samaj was established by Dayānanda Saraswati, which the most important thing is that Veda should be taken into consideration. Whatever Veda says is dharma, and whatever Veda says should be practiced. Whatever is not there in the Vedas, they are all after effects, which were only concoctions that people who came after they have invented, like worshipping of various kinds of gods, rituals, casteism, untouchability. There is no mention of these things in the Vedas. So therefore that should not be considered as dharma. Dharma is that what Veda says. So this is the main thing that Arya Samaj wanted to preach. So it was called a militant Hindu organization. Now we come to specific transformation that it brought about in the religious front. Reforms, religious reforms that it has brought about. So Arya Samaj played a vital role in the regeneration of Hinduism. This is religiously, it wanted to regenerate Hinduism or resurgence of Hinduism. So Samaj stressed on the theism of Vedic Hinduism, though not on the unity of religions. It intended to check the growth of Islam and Christianity, and it wanted to discover the indigenous monotheism with its virility and militant character, and it wanted to create a distinctly Indian monotheism, not mixed with either Christianity or Islam, because they were foreign religions. They are not born in India. So he wanted to take only the religion that was born in India. So he wanted to interpret the many gods of Rigveda as diverse forms for the one God, or diverse names of one God, He wanted to restore the Aryan culture with all its ancient institutions and practices. The Samaj wanted to restore the Vedic values and practices in their pristine purity. So Arya Samaj depended on the Sanskrit scriptures, purely on the Sanskrit scriptures. It regarded Islam and Christianity as false religions also, and it also considered Muslims and Christians as the enemies of Aryan culture. It offered a bold and straightforward monotheism and rejected all scriptures other than the Vedic scriptures or Vedas. It provided the individual with a creed that one could carry out and hope of salvation as a result of right conduct. Every human being has the right to study the scriptures, and restrictions imposed by the ecclesiastical system on the study of the Hindu scriptures should be removed. And other reforms that Arya Samaj took are as follows. So he did not want the Vedas remain as sealed book, but the word of God should be spread among the God's sons. 5 important principles that every member of the Samaj should follow daily are as follows. One is Brahma Yagna. The principle that these people have to follow is Brahma Yagna, that is study of the Vedas, and also involving or practicing meditation in order to realize the truth that is there in the Vedas. Second one is Devagnana, that is the fire sacrifice with the ghee. And third is social service. Fourth is the recitation of Gayatri Mantra. And fifth is sacrifice according to the Vedic rituals. So these are the 5 important principles that every member of the society should follow. Then there are 10 niyamas apart from those 5. These 10 niyamas are again, they can be called as principles or rules, which was precisely stated or as follows. So that is, God is the primary cause of true knowledge of everything known, which means everything that can be known by its true nature. God is all truth, all knowledge, without a beginning, and the support, the Lord of all pervading, omniscient, imperishable, incomparable, immortal, eternal, holy, and God is the cause of this universe. Another thing is Vedas are the books of true knowledge, and it is the paramount duty of every Arya to read or hear them read by others, to teach and preach to others. Another principle is one should always be ready to accept truth and renounce untruth. All actions ought to be done in conformity to virtue. Doing good to the world by improving physical, spiritual, and social conditions is another principle. All ought to be treated with love, justice, and due regard to their merits. Ignorance ought to be dispelled and knowledge should be diffused. None ought to be contented with his own good, with his good alone, but everyone ought to regard his prosperity as being included in the prosperity of others. And one should discard all differences and not allow one's individuality to interfere with others' individuality. But in strict personal matters, everyone may act with freedom. These are the 10 principles which are, 3 of them are theological and 7 of them are ethical. So these are the 10 important theological and ethical points that Dayānanda Saraswati wanted to, every Aryan, which means every member of the Arya Samaj should practice, and these involve, in terms of realization of the Vedic truth and also behaving according to the rules that are prescribed in the Vedas. One of the important thing is that one's welfare is not sufficient. One should go for the or work for the welfare of others also. And one's individuality is restricted to his own activities, but he should not confine to the welfare of himself or herself. His individuality should extend to the welfare of others also, which means the subjectivity should also be intersubjective. This is the one of the main things that we have to bear in mind that Arya Samaj brought out. So in the works of this organization as far as religious reforms are concerned is preaching, educating and spreading of literature through newspapers and organizing orphanages and upliftment of the depressed classes. Societies which were under the Arya Samaj include Arya Tract Society and Women's Arya Samaj, Young Men's Arya Association and Vedic Salvation Army. These are the different sub-organizations or sub-societies that were working under Arya Samaj. And it sought to outflank the Christian missionary movements and to meet the impact of Islam also. It was open to all, both men and women, to study the Vedas. And it taught that there are three eternal existences, that is, one, God, soul and matter. See, the important thing that we have to bear in mind is religious reform consisted in checking the onslaught of Islam and Christianity, which were trying to take the Hindus into their fold by giving some, attract with some attraction of the benefits that people were in need of. So this is the important thing that we have to bear in mind. It also taught in the religious front that soul undergoes transmigration according to the law of karma. The soul, even when released from the transmigration, is not absorbed in God. Salvation comes only by continued well-doing, not only well-being. You have to do good to others. It denied the doctrine of avatars or divine incarnation. That is, just as the Puranas, Hindu Puranas contain the theory of Dashavataras, that God now and then, he takes the avatar or incarnation in various forms. That are 10, 11 avatars are there, but the Arya Samaj did not believe in the incarnation of God. God never incarnates. He just remains pure always. That we can through meditation, through the study of Vedic scriptures and the obtaining of knowledge that is there in the Upanishads, is the only source of realizing the God. It is not praying the incarnations or avatars that are there in temples. So it denied the doctrine of avatars or divine incarnation. It criticized idolatry and the practice of killing animals in sacrifice in the name of yagnas and yagas. Fire sacrifice of the Vedas is retained as a means of purifying the air. So one can conduct yagas or yagnas by fire. Offering. Fire offering means you can add some oil or ghee to it, and then as a means of purifying the atmosphere. So Hindu reforms of ancestral worship known as Shraddhas is condemned as useless, and this society religiously it condemned or it criticized or it prevented even pilgrimage, which means pilgrimage should be given up as superstition. It took back the converts, as we already mentioned, from Muslim and Christians, and it brought into the Hindu fold after purifying. It was called Suddhin movement. What is the Suddhin movement is? you have to conduct a ritual of purification and then bring back those who have gone into Islam and Christianity, and you make them again the Hindus. And it established educational institutions, contributed to arousing national consciousness. It preached the gospel of Swadeshi, and the slogan is India for Indians. It defended the honor of Hindus and instilled in them self-respect and patriotism. It took pride in the cultural and intellectual heritage of India. It created a new Indian religion, Indian society, education and national consciousness. But the death of Dayānanda was a great blow to the Samaj, and even then members carried the work of this Brahma Samaj. He entrusted with the great enthusiasm. Then other people perpetuated the memory of Swami Dayānanda. An Anglo-Vedic college was also opened at Lahore in 1887, and the college is the largest in Punjab and forms a worthy memorial to Dayananda's devotion and energy. In 1892, Arya Samaj broke into two groups, namely cultured party and the Mahatma party, that is vegetarian party. The former were progressive and stood for modern education and for freedom in dietary habits. It declared the Arya Samaj is one true universal religion. The opponents favored the ancient Hindu education and they stood by vegetarianism. They declared the teaching of Samaj should be pure Hinduism, not universal Hinduism. However, Swami Dayānanda Saraswati was the key personality of the Arya Samaj, and his substantial teachings were retained in the society he founded, even though it was divided into two groups. He and his Samaj have done much towards the naturalizing in modern India the old Vedic optimism. Swami Dayānanda, religiously can be called the builder of modern India and crusader of Indian Renaissance. So we have to separately deal with the other aspect of other reforms of this society. They are called as the social reforms, which we have already mentioned here and there, because we cannot completely clearly distinguish between religious and social reforms, but we have to see now what are the specific social reforms that the Arya Samaj brought out in India. So Arya Samaj set itself the goal of purging society of its rampant evils. What were those rampant evils? It fought against early marriage of people, both boys and girls, and it fought against enforced widowhood, and it said that they were un-Vedic. Early marriage is not mentioned in Vedas, and widowhood means widow should not remarry, she should remain as a useless woman at home, she should not come out, she should not participate in the activities of society. They are all un-Vedic. It proclaimed even in those days for the social reformation of this marriage institution. So it championed the cause of untouchables also. It opened doors of Arya Samaj to the untouchables also, and it fought against the Parda system and the custom of dowry also. See, one of the important things, even in those days this society has fought against the custom of dowry, but the tragedy is this custom is still persisting. See, the vision of India, what was it? The vision of India by Arya Samaj is, which is purged of the superstitions, filled with the fruits of science, worshipping of one God, and India which is capable of self-rule. And it discovered the principle of social equality in the ancient Indian polity. See, ancient Indian polity, in the sense ancient Indian political society, itself was based on the principle of equality. There is no scope for inequality even in the political thought of ancient India. So it discovered the principle of social equality, and it attacked the Indian caste system as the bane of the society. As the bane means the unfortunate situation of the society, that is caste system. So caste system created artificial barriers, and it caused social and cultural stagnation and decline of India. And it also preached all men are equal by nature, and they are all brothers and sisters of each other. Castes are simply different professions or guilds. Guilds means groups established by state to guard against confusion, mutual interference, and for accomplishment of different works. Castes should be determined by character, conduct, merit, and worth of the individual. Lower castes or Shudras should not be prohibited from studying the Vedas. Supporter of the rights of women, this society was the supporter of, socially speaking, rights of women, and wanted to put women on par with men in all respects. It opposed child marriage and asserted that the natural age of marriage was 18 for girls and 30 for boys. In those days itself, it's a very progressive idea that this Arya Samaj brought into light. And it was in favor of widow marriages and women's education. It was for upliftment of Hindus from the slough of despondency into which they had fallen. It inspired Indians to achieve spiritual regeneration of India with confidence. It promoted education, organized schools and colleges, imparted education in mother tongue. It established a very good boarding schools for girls at Jalandhar, and it founded the Gurukul Mahavidyalaya at Haridwar in 1902, which is a famous university now in Haridwar. So educational institutions that were founded and run by the Arya Samaj even now includes 500 high schools, 2000 primary schools, 60 Gurukulas, 300 Sanskrit schools, 400 schools for Harijans, 12 technical institutions, and a number of DAV schools and colleges which are of high standards. And it organizes orphanages and widow houses, and first non-Christian agency for the relief of distress caused by famine. So these are the important social measures. And the social ideas and ideals of Arya Samaj can be summed up as follows. That is the fatherhood of God and fatherhood of man, the equality of all sexes, equal opportunities to all according to their nature, according to their action, that is karma, and according to their good deeds, that is merit, and love and charity towards all. And all these reforms, it aims at establishing a Hindu missionary movement to bring all the Hindus back to one fold under the banner of the Veda. Arya Samaj was successful among the Orthodox Hindus, and it has really brought about a revolutionary changes in the socio-religious and political context. And Dayānanda, as a matter of fact, was a dynamic saint who has imparted dynamism to the entire Arya Samaj. And his personality has left an impression on the Indians, and it will influence the religious history of India. Regeneration of India and Hinduism in particular, he is no less than Martin Luther King. In the regeneration of India and Hinduism, he is no less than Martin Luther King, the Protestant theologian and reformer of Christianity. And as a summary, we can put forth some of the main important points that we have seen. Arya Samaj is the largest and most influential reform movement in India, which is still working, and it held that the Vedas are the sole revelations from God, and it also maintained that all religions are bound sooner or later to succumb to the triumphant march of the eternal Vedic religion. It wanted to recall India to the forsaken Vedic paths and to preach the Vedic gospel throughout the whole world. It fought against all the existing evils. It favored widow marriages. It propagated Hindi and Sanskrit. And it served educational needs of the Indians and inspired patriotism. It acted as a potent factor in the socio-political awakening of modern India, and it augmented regeneration of India with particular emphasis on the wisdom of the Vedas and the greatness of Hinduism. So the importance of Arya Samaj in the regeneration of India, or reformation of India, or renaissance of India, is that it concentrated on Hindu scriptures, Vedas and Upanishads, Hindu religion. It wanted to reconstruct Hindu religion, and also on the basis of the reconstruction of Hindu religion, it wanted to reconstruct India socially, politically and culturally without taking the help of any other religion. It is not the universality of religions that it preached. It wanted to preach that Hindu religion itself contains every truth that even the other religions should borrow from Hinduism. Hinduism need not borrow anything from other religions. So this is the greatness of Dayānanda Saraswati, the founder of Arya Samaj, which is still working, which is still fighting for the evils in Hindu society, and also fighting against the evils of Hindu society, and also all other kinds of evils that are there in other religions or in other societies. And it wanted to transform not only Hindu religion but also other religions, not only India but world as a whole. Thank you very much.